Hunter Biden was indicted, I believe, 2 days ago or the day before yesterday. So let's get into it. I want to show a couple of clips, one from Fox News, one from CNN, and one from MSNBC to kind of get what the two sides are talking about. The establishment, the establishment arms are talking about when they're talking about this story. So let's listen to Fox News first, and we'll take it from there.
Joe Biden's problems just got worse. His son Hunter getting indicted on 3 gun charges. It's relying on a federal form 3 years ago while cracked out of his mind. And it's the same firearm that got tossed out in a garbage can, which he then blamed on illegals. If convicted, Hunter could face up to 25 years in the slammer. And prosecutors hint there could be more charges on the way. It's a real head scratcher if you take Joe's word that his son has done nothing wrong.
First of all, my son's done nothing wrong. I trust him. I have faith in him. And it impacts my presidency by making me feel proud of him. And this thing about a gun, I didn't know anything about it. I have great confidence in my son. I love him. And he's on the straight and narrow.
He's making you look like a fool now.
And I'm just so proud of him.
Democrats are relieved that Hunter's gun charges don't have anything to do with Joe Biden yet.
We shouldn't take delight in other people's misfortunes, but we have to have a rule of law. And when people commit crimes, then the consequences follow.
The Justice Department charges have nothing to do with the president. Hunter Biden is a private citizen. He is not the president of the United States.
It sounds like
a trombone
appointed by Donald Trump, kept by Joe Biden to investigate his own son, has found that there's no wrongdoing that Joe Biden did. So, great.
Tell that Fang Fang. Joe Biden's other problem that's not named Hunter is his age. And it looks like Democrats can't avoid that one either.
Well, age is a relative thing, as we all know. Let's be in the very positive vein about age. It is about
as the 83-year-old says,
the president needs to have. Joe Biden knows his why.
The conclusion that people draw is,
I like what Mitt Romney said recently. Now, this could be all made up, what he's saying. He said, I'm retiring because I think he referenced that he's in his 80s. He looks pretty good for an 80-year-old, actually, I got to say. I think he referenced that. If he said 70, 80, but the point was that, hey, I'm too old. I think it's time for some young people to get in here. How the hell do we? Nancy Pelosi, 83. Mitch McConnell, freezing while talking. Joe Biden, dementia, mixing up where he's at, doesn't know where he's at, acting like he was on ground zero on 9/11 when he wasn't. Dianne Feinstein. Like so many, Chuck Grassley. How old is Chuck Grassley? Chuck Schumer is up there. Like, what are we doing? Think about this. What could we possibly benefit? Do you think, is it possible to have a country, a geriatric sort of country that is progressive? Do you think that's possible? I guess it's possible. But is it plausible? I guess is the question. I don't think it's plausible. I mean, we could find a bunch of people. I guess we want to use Bernie Sanders. Let's say we had a bunch of Bernie Sanders. He's decent. So I guess we would need in Congress 535 of them. I guess that would work. But it's an indication that they don't trust. The ruling class doesn't necessarily trust the up and coming to be as staunch as these older people, and maybe that's what it is. But anyway, let's finish watching, and then we continue.
Off base. When people say to me, "Well, he's old," yeah, that's right. But look at what he's gotten done.
Nothing.
And then, if that's not enough for you, look
it's not
at the alternative.
The White House.
That's not enough either.
Media for bringing it up, but they're not going to stop. It's a water cooler issue with Republicans. It just is.
All right, Judge, gun charges. Is this all there is, or is there more to come?
Now, I typically don't use The 5 because although it's one of their most popular shows, if not the most popular show, I know Gutfield, the one on the far right, has a show and it's pretty popular on there. And I know that this show is, and Fox and Friends, but I don't know the order of ranking. But this to me sometimes feels very unserious, like the lady on the far right and the guy in the middle. Jesse Waters and the girl on the far left, I should say. I can't take seriously. But today, I did want to use this clip because of the humor. We do want to make it a little more lighter with what's happening with Hunter Biden. Because actually, let me leave it there and then play the clip, and then I'll explain later.
There is definitely more to come. First of all, the walls are closing in on Joe Biden right now. The dominoes have started to fall. We talked about this with David Ignatius, the opinion piece in the Washington Post. We knew that it was going to start falling apart. And then we have Nancy Pelosi, who's a very smart woman who is able to say very clearly that, Joe Biden is the greatest, Kamala is the greatest. And instead, she refuses to say that Kamala Harris is the best running mate for Joe Biden. Okay.
So she's referencing the other story I was talking about, and that clip I am going to play. So I'm playing it in a different segment, but I will play that clip, and it goes to my segment of how they're throwing Kamala Harris under the bus. This is a coordinated sort of thing that's happening. It's not a coincidence. The poll, CNN poll comes out. The charges are dropped on the Washington Post. David Ignatius article comes out. Nancy Pelosi and Rep. Raskin. I'm going to show you that video. Rep. Raskin, literally with Jake Tapper, refusing to say if Kamala Harris was the best running mate for him, and Jake Tapper pushes him on it. So this is not a coincidence. They go from not wanting to say anything bad about Joe Biden, blaming his dementia on stuttering, to now where they're accepting what's going on. Because it's a finally realizing that we need to change here if we want to keep the blue team in power in the White House. And I think they see it slipping away. But let's listen to maybe a few more minutes, and then I'm going to play the next clip on MSNBC.
And then you've got Mika Brzezinski actually saying this morning that this has now become a real serious discussion about Joe's age and his mental acuity. Okay, but now we've got the first time in American history that a president's son has been indicted. He's been indicted.
Yeah, where is her
neck?
That's
very much
a good question.
Crime. It is a matter of record, the public record. He has made admissions in the book. 3 counts to this indictment, adding up to 25 years. However, those 25 years, if he were to be convicted of all 3, lying on the form, lying to the person he bought the gun from, and actually possessing the gun while he was under the influence of drugs, the sentences would be run concurrently. That means he's never going to get 25 years. And as a first offender, it's probably not going to be anything, even near the highest charge or the lowest, which is 5 years. However, what is stunning about all this is that there was absolutely nothing preventing this indictment from being issued 5 years ago or 4 years and 11 months ago. The fact that David Weiss now has special prosecutor status hasn't given him any additional powers that he didn't already have, because this indictment is in Delaware, where Hunter lives, where the crime was committed. And David Weiss has always had the power in that particular place. Now, the whistleblowers are the ones who really open this thing up to us, because Joe Biden has been lying, and you actually do get it. It's his son. He loves him.
Now, I watch a lot of the coverage here, and it is sometimes hard to sort of narrow down exactly all of this corruption. They're talking about it. They always talk about it in vague terms, meaning when I say vague terms, meaning they just refer to it all holistically as corruption. It's never... Or they'll say he's taking money, tell me what that is. And maybe that's what maybe that's what they want to do through the impeachment inquiry, is get the bank statement so they're able to corroborate what they believe in some instances. But it is hard to narrow down some of the critiques they had, or some of the things they're saying about Joe Biden now. I can narrow down the corruption that I know of, but what they're saying specifically about China, that's the part that for me so far has been hard to kind of narrow down. But here is the next one. This is CNN. This is supposed to be we're in the middle. That's what they want to project. So we just came from the right perspective on the same story. Now we're going to supposedly the quote unquote middle. This is by ruling class framing that I'm using their term. So they had to bring in everybody here. When you see them like having huge panels, that means they have a lot of propaganda to sell. You noticed it with the January 6th, 10 people up here talking. That means they have a lot of propaganda to sell. They're making it like a show within the show, like a PowerPoint presentation. But let's listen to what CNN says about Hunter Biden getting indicted.
A historic decision by the Department of Justice. They have filed charges against the son of President Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, 3 different charges, 2 of them related to lying on statements in an effort to buy a firearm. The 3rd charge for actually possessing that firearm as a prohibited person. A reminder, the case being brought by special counsel Daniel Weiss is based on Hunter Biden's purchase of this weapon, as he wrote in this form that he was not abusing narcotics, and later in a biography wrote that he did. We have a team of reporters and analysts with us to break down this news. First to Paula Reed. Paula, you're getting some new reporting about what's going on.
Yeah, I've been speaking over the past few days to people in Hunter Biden's camp, and I got the sense that it's just pretty dark and gloomy over there. They feel really defeated. They really thought that they were going to be successful with that plea deal that they had negotiated.
They really thought that good old daddy and his influence, I mean, he's the president. If you can't get an influence from the president, that's what Hunter Biden said. If I can't get my daddy to chime in here, where can I get him to chime in? This is his Justice Department. And they tried to sneak that shit through. Hunter Biden's lawyer in tandem, in conjunction with the DOJ, in all of these charges, Merrick Garland and everything. They thought they were going to sneak past that plea deal. If they had a judge that wasn't, I don't know if she's or the person was ethical or not. But let's say less ethical. I'm not, because I don't want to attribute giving them like they're ethical that they don't deserve, because I don't know. Let's say even less ethical, they would have just let this slide through. But she looked, I think I keep referring to her as a she because I believe it was a female judge, and was like, this seems a little weird. You're trying to get me entangled in this gun charge. How are we wiping away a gun charge for this? And then you're putting me in this, and then it falls through because what came to be and I think we can say with certainty this was what it was. It was an agreement on paper, and then it was the actual agreement that wasn't on paper. That's why it didn't make sense on paper. Because, does this cover everything? That's why it was vague. So that later, that was the cover, of course. Everybody understood that, both sides. But when that was called out, the prosecution was like, he told him, hey, if they find out this plan, I'm going to act like I didn't know anything about it. And that's exactly what the prosecution did. Kind of threw their hands up. And now they're having to sort of being forced to have to prosecute him. Or this is going to look bad for the president. Literally, if they didn't do this, this is going to look bad. And this is probably the first set of charges he's going to have.
Negotiated. Even when it first fell apart, they felt like ultimately the judge would approve it. And when that didn't happen, there was quite a bit of despair because Hunter Biden is facing millions and millions of dollars in legal debt from his various legal issues. And it's very difficult for him to find employment right now or raise money. So these charges today, I am told these came as news to their team. They have not scheduled an initial appearance or how exactly he's going to turn himself in, right? Will he be arrested? Well, typically you arrange a time to turn yourself in. But I've also been asking a lot about his relationship with his father and with the White House. And I'm told by multiple sources that he's actually still very close to his dad. They talk frequently, but they don't talk about this criminal case a lot.
Right. That's what happens. That's what happens.
Yeah, and they shouldn't be talking about it, right?
Right.
Why?
That's also, they should not be talking about.
Why? Your son calls you about an issue he has. It doesn't matter if he did something illegal. he's still your son. You're not going to console him. You're not going to talk about the issue. That's what they think. That's what they think. We believe. They're going to talk about that. Yeah, right. Now, I mean, in general. Now, specifically, maybe he's not talking about it because Joe Biden is incapable because of his cognitive decline. So that could be true in this instance, but let's not, come on. Let's continue.
About this. I want to go to Kayla Tausche at the White House. As you're seeking reaction there, tell us what you're getting.
Well, Brianna, we are hearing from the White House counsel's office, who, as expected, when asked to respond to the news of the indictment today, said that any questions should be referred to the Department of Justice or Hunter's personal representatives, given that this is an independent investigation. That has been the official line from the White House ever since this began. The White House has pointed out the Trump appointment of David Weiss as essentially legitimizing the investigation back when it was expected to result in a plea deal, and also suggested that the 5-year nature of the investigation meant that wherever it was going to end up was going to be done in a way that evaluated all of the facts at hand. Certainly, it has taken a different turn than the White House, than the president had expected. The president was said to be.
Does it feel like between the two coverages we saw on Fox News and this one, it has a more somber feel, doesn't it? It has a feel of almost like mourning. That's the feel I get so far in this reporting. Let's let her finish up, and then I'll move to the MSNBC clip.
Be relieved when this was headed toward a plea deal, and that when the plea deal fell apart, there was quite a bit of uncertainty and frustration that entered the situation. But when I spoke to some people who are close to the White House about, the efforts by Republicans to try to tie the president to the actions of his son, they said, at this point, the only thing the president is guilty of is loving his son and keeping him close, and that aides within the White House know that. They know not to cross the president when it comes to issues involving Hunter, that he remains extremely close, as Paula said, to his father. The two men speak regularly. Hunter is still invited to official White House events. He's invited on the president's plane, on his vacations, and that despite these legal troubles, the president has not been willing to keep Hunter at a distance. And so that is the nature of this relationship behind the scenes at the White House, though there is said to be some frustration that this did not end the way that it was expected to end just a few weeks ago.
Jessica Dean, to Kayla's point there's, of course, a political backdrop to this. The former president is facing 4 trials, right? Mm-hmm. There are allegations on the Hill that Biden, though they presented no public evidence of this, was somehow involved in Hunter Biden's business dealings. So you have Republicans claiming there's a 2-tiered system. You're trying our president in a way you're not trying. But fact is, this is the first time the Justice Department has ever charged the son of a sitting president, and happens to be Joe Biden's son. Do you speak to Democrats who believe that politics intervened here from the other direction, that the DOJ or the special counsel?
These motherfuckers got the audacity. They got the audacity. Did you hear what Jake Tapper, or is that Jake Tapper? Is that Jake Tapper? Or the guy said, whoever that was. I can't remember Jake Tapper. Do you get the feeling that Democrats feel like the charges against Hunter is politically driven? They got some audacity. They got some freaking audacity to ask a question like that after what they've been peddling here, after the fascism from the Democratic Party and the Joe Biden administration with going after Trump 91 charges. You got some audacity.
Counsel or David Weiss, the prosecutor, felt political pressure that the deal they made and were signed on to was too soft, and therefore they had to go tougher.
Look, I think the DOJ and you all have followed this so closely. DOJ, the Attorney General, have done everything they can to keep this as nonpartisan as possible. They have tried to do that in a hyper-partisan world that we live in. Everything has political implications. This, of course, has political implications for a variety of reasons. You'll remember our polling that just came out. 55% of Americans believe that President Biden acted inappropriately around...
You see why this is so bad for the Biden administration? Regardless if it's true or not, truth has nothing to do in American politics whatsoever. She just told you in their own poll, CNN, and this is a trusted poll. That's why it's devastating. In their own poll, 55% of all people believe that Joe Biden has done something wrong in conjunction with her son. You see how just a trial for Hunter Biden just going to have some spillover, even if it's subconsciously, it's going to have some spillover. But let's, he is the Fredo. Hunter Biden is absolutely the Fredo of the family. And if you don't know, that reference is from the Corleone family of The Godfather, Al Pacino. That was I think he was the older brother, though. Yeah, he was the older brother. That's why he was mad, because they skipped over him becoming the next Godfather and gave it to the younger son, Michael, played by Al Pacino. But anyway, let's get back to let's get now to actually, let's go to the MSNBC clip. Since I have it paused here, let's go ahead and just make the transition now to the MSNBC clip to kind of bring this to a close, this segment. We saw what the right wing said. We saw the performance that the CNN put on with that big panel. And now we go to Stephanie Ruhle. She's one of the people on MSNBC I dislike the most, is Stephanie Ruhle. I think it's because I have a residual resentment towards her. She said something about Bernie back when he was doing good, and I think it was 16. Anyway, let's listen to Stephanie Ruhle.
We got some big news tonight. A federal grand jury has indicted President Biden's son Hunter on felony gun charges, setting the stage for a possible criminal trial during the 2024 campaign. NBC's Ryan Nobles has the latest on this story.
Tonight, Hunter Biden under criminal indictment and facing the possibility of prison time.
Any comment on the Hunter Biden investigation, sir?
Special counsel David Weiss not commenting today after handing down 3 federal felony gun charges against Hunter Biden for allegedly lying about his drug addiction when he purchased a firearm. 2 of those charges carrying maximum sentences of 10 years in prison. It comes just 2 months after that controversial plea deal fell apart under a judge's scrutiny. Weiss had negotiated an agreement for the president's son to avoid any prison time by going through a pretrial diversion program on the gun charge and pleading guilty to misdemeanor tax charges. Republicans had slammed it as a sweetheart deal for the president's son and blasted Attorney General Merrick Garland for choosing Weiss as the special counsel to investigate Hunter Biden. Tonight, a top Republican told us the gun charges are not enough.
If I ranked those crimes 1 through 12, I would rank this one a distant 12. And ironically, this is the one crime the president's son committed that you can't tie back to the president.
House Republicans have opened an impeachment inquiry to investigate whether President Biden benefited from the foreign business dealings of Hunter Biden and other Biden family members. Though they've presented no direct evidence against President Biden yet, and the White House says their investigation has been a bust. Meanwhile, tonight, one of the 2 IRS whistleblowers to testify to Congress that Hunter Biden was given preferential treatment during the tax investigation is speaking out to NBC News.
I'm a 38-year-old gay man. My politics are simple. I am a Democrat.
Joe Ziegler telling NBC's Tom Winter that Weiss was not the right choice for special counsel.
Did there come a point where there were witnesses that you wanted to interview that prosecutors said, we don't think that's a good idea?
Yes, there were multiple witnesses.
This is a Democrat.
We wanted to go interview and we were shot down.
There's also news in the Georgia election case tonight. The judge has rejected DA Fani Willis's request to try all 19 defendants together. No surprise, Donald Trump and 16
They do this a lot. Morning Joe does this very, very often. If they have any bad news about Joe Biden, we're switching a different segment. They just quickly start, and they switch to talking about Trump. It's a way of saying tit for tat. It's a way of saying, I show you bad shit, I show you show his bad shit, I show his bad shit. Like, that's what you do. It's kind of to level the bad news, to always serve bad news about your own team with bad news about the other team. That's sort of like what they do. But anyway, I don't think she comes back.
Will not be going to trial in October when Ken Chesebro and Sidney Powell do. They are set to be tried on October 23rd.
Now, you ask yourself, what does that have to do with the gun charge? They have good editors over at MSNBC. Why would they edit that out? That had nothing to do with the topic. That was literally 10 seconds. Why do they need to do that? So let's get to the article now. So here is the article. This is from Politico. Hunter Biden indicted on gun charges. Let's read a little bit. A Delaware grand jury charged the president's son with illegally owning a gun as a drug user. Now, let me just pause here. If we had, Second Amendment rights to own a gun, but they brought up all of these caveats to that. You got to have this, you got to have that. If you have the right to own a gun, what does using drugs have to do with it? That's the question you would ask. This is a philosophical question you would ask. President Joe Biden's son is under indictment on Thursday. So it was yesterday, not 2 days ago. I misspoke earlier. On Thursday, a Delaware grand jury indicted Hunter Biden on 3 gun-related charges, including illegally owning a firearm as a drug user and lying on a form when he allegedly bought the gun. Thursday's move is a major escalation in the Justice Department's probe of Hunter Biden, heightening both his legal jeopardy and his father's political peril. The courtroom fight will play out in tandem with a Republican impeachment inquiry into the president that is scrutinizing his son's business dealings. Now you see, literally this one part right here tells you why they have to get rid of Joe Biden now. Why they, literally this plea deal falling apart and the propaganda not working around Bidenomics. That's literally, it's not working. We got to get rid of him. But I continue. The indictment notes that when buying guns, people must fill out a form saying, among other things, that they do not use illegal drugs. In October 2018, the indictment continues. Biden bought a gun. That's Hunter. I should say Hunter bought a gun despite being a drug user. It says he owned a Colt Cobra revolver for about 11 days from on or about October 12th, 2018 until on or about October 23rd, 2018. If convicted, Biden could face up to 25 years in prison and hundreds of thousands of dollars in fine. However, sentences are often issued below the maximum length allowed, and some defendants don't face jail time, which we know he won't face any jail time. We already know that, Politico. I know you're throwing that in there to set people up for the fact that this guy's not going to jail. Of course he's not going to jail. There's several different levels of reasons why he's not going to jail. Jen Psaki on Hunter Biden's gun indictment, quote, millions of Americans have dealt with family members who have drug addiction, alcohol addiction. This is a heartbroken president in the White House who is worried about his son. And then Ryan Knight, shout out to Ryan Knight, says this. The difference is millions of Americans who have family members struggling with addictions were not the architects of the crime bill, like Joe Biden was, that locked people up for battling addiction. That's the problem. And that's why people I feel like go in on him, even though he's a drug addict. It's because, look at your father. This is hypocritical. It's millions of people that were locked up because of your father, and he boasted about it for the very same thing that you're going through, Hunter.
I mean, we have to have a rule of law, Mika and Joe. It's such a relief to hear that from people, including when it's about, as you just said, somebody who is very close to the president. I mean, first and foremost, the politics of this are a little hard to predict. But right now you have the president's son, somebody he loves deeply, somebody who has very publicly struggled with drug addiction, now facing these charges, which are serious. And I'll let Andrew do a contemplation of the legality and the process and all of that, which I know a lot of us have questions on. What is tricky to watch here, and what I think we all will be watching, is What do Republicans do with this on the Hill as it relates to their impeachment process baloney efforts, right? We didn't see a lot of that yesterday, a lot of the tying of these charges to their impeachment efforts. If there are additional charges that we see from the Department of Justice that Andrew just alluded to, I suspect they would try to do that. But right now, what we're looking at, and I think on the politics of this, millions of Americans have dealt with family members who have dealt with drug addiction, who've dealt with alcohol addiction, who have dealt with a range of addiction. My bet is right now, this is a heartbroken president in the White House who is worried about his son. And we're all watching to see kind of what happens with this. So, Andrew, my question for you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was going to just ask Andrew, because I'm just curious, because we're all trying to figure this out. What happens exactly next year, right? There's a lot of talk, which is important for all.
So there you go. This is a sad story, I guess. And people just really, I was being sarcastic there, but people really just don't have, they don't have a soft heart for this particular drug addict because of your dad. Your dad put thousands, if not millions, of drug addicts in prison without any sort of pity or anything like that.